Wow, welcome to another exciting time of Get Real with Abiola Adeola. Today it gives me great pleasure to have a wonderful person, and his name is Mr. Dele Adeyinka. Who is Mr. Dele Adeyinka? Number one, he's a lover of God, very passionate about God and his kingdom. He's also a devoted family man with one wife and 3 fantastic children, and of course he is a career person, one whom you call kingdom pillar. Those are the ones that God has set upon the mountains. He's currently the chief digital officer at Polaris Bank. So with a big, great, loud applaud to Mr. Dele Adeyinka. Thank you so very much for being our guest.
If it had not been for your grace, only affection anymore. If it had not been for your mercy, oh Lord, I'm not shining more. Yeah. Somebody say, oh, they are yes, sir. Somebody say, I'm not shining.
You know, one of the things I love about this particular program is we have individuals and persons who have this great encounter with God, and from that great encounter they begin to see their lives being transformed, their lives being changed. And I believe that the audience, the viewers, in listening to your story, somebody who is at one rock bottom may pick a word, may pick a counsel, may pick an experience from you, and know that whatever it is they are going through, if Dele Adeyinka can go through it, they definitely can go through it. So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And usually when I start off, I like finding out a bit about your family background. Just very briefly, just tell us about how you were raised, your parents, your siblings, you know, the naughty ones, just wonderful experiences of your childhood. Just give us a brief.
Thank you very much, Pastor Bella, for having me on this program. I really do appreciate it. And I hope, just like I've said, a lot of our viewers will be blessed from the experiences that will be shared at this session. I'm Dele Adeyinka, and I'm first out of the 6 in my family, a nuclear family, all the way from Ilesha in Osun State. Yes, first out of the 6, we have one lady or woman now, family woman among us. Others are men, and we are in different parts of the world. But the message in itself is we came from a very low background, and I'm sure for those who are from that side of Nigeria will be able to relate to some of the things I will share. My parents are teachers, they are educationists. My father retired as a local inspector of education. My mother also retired as a teacher in a secondary school out there. So you could imagine having 6 of us in that family, all being trained by these educationists. The only legacy, and the very firm legacy, they always say they left for us, is spending their time and energy and resources to ensure that they are able to see us through the schools, even though it was a very tough one. And by the way, while I was in my final year was when my father actually retired. So it was a very tough one for myself after school, and then my siblings who also were in school at that time. We couldn't say we have all we needed anyway to survive in life. It was a real struggle. But over the years, and I'm sure we'll share some of those encounters and experiences God has seen us through. So it's a real story of from grass to what we call grace today. So it's a story of grace all the way as we get into it.
I have a question. You know, you mentioned that you're the firstborn.
Yes.
I want to talk about this burden of being the firstborn. Did you feel the pressure when you were growing up? And now that you're a man with children, wife and family, is the pressure real? Is it still there?
Yeah, the pressure is actually real. Maybe not real when we were younger because my parents were there. But just like I highlighted, my final year in university, my father retired, and it was how really was it going to be able to raise the funds to take care of all my siblings, 5 of them behind me, and then I also had to be fending for myself. I served in Kaduna. I finished from University of Ibadan, one of the best, by the way. I know
we will not contest, this is not the platform for that contest. We will let that slide because this is an interview. But really, after the interview, the battle begins. Continue.
Awesome. So I just managed to finish from UI, and then I was posted to Kaduna State to serve. And at that time, there were no mobile phones, no means of communication. So I was far away from home, right in the north.
Wow.
And I just had to be fending for myself. I graduated, by the way, at the age of 21.
Wow.
So imagine a 21-year-old young man all out there by himself, no father, no mother, no sibling, no elder, nothing, nobody to look up to except God. So I just had to hold on to God. And by the way, at the service here, at the camp in itself, I also decided, because I had an encounter with God before I got into the service here, while I was still in the secondary school, by the way, I had an encounter with God and I got born again at that time. So all throughout university days, I was in the Deeper Life Fellowship, and then after school, I just had to find some way of surviving. At the camp, I volunteered my information because it was a religious body, and these religious bodies came to the camp and they said for those who would like to serve with them needed to volunteer their particulars.
Wow.
And that was how I found myself serving in that ministry in Kaduna.
Something interesting you just said. You talked about you having to fend for yourself.
Yeah.
And I want you to just help us expatiate a bit further. We have a generation today, and I'm not sure that generation will ever stop, where you find yourself, whether in primary school, some from secondary school, even university, and you have to literally fend for yourself. I remember a particular lady who then, she was working at the airport from 8 a.m. to about 4-5 p.m. Then she worked in security from about 6 to the following morning because she was sending herself either to school on the weekend. So, and you also see a generation when you meet them, why are you not in school? There's nobody to sponsor me. There's no one to sponsor. So I want you to speak to that, so that people can learn that sometimes you may not have anybody to sponsor you, but that shouldn't cut short your journey. That's not the end of your journey.
Yeah. So right there in Kaduna, remember, I've left home. My parents had the headache of ensuring that the 5 siblings behind me were able to go through school. And the only thing I resorted to doing when I got into Kaduna, by keeping the story short, is I had to find a way of buying cows, getting them into town. So I traveled far into the interland, find some way of raising the money. By the way, that's another kettle and fish in itself. Took some loans here and there, bought the cows, brought them to the abattoir, and we were all selling those meats to different hotels, to different eateries, just to survive right there while service was going on and even after service. And by the way, I stayed 5 years in Kaduna altogether after service because I just needed to do my master's immediately after NYC. So it was more like surviving, selling meat in the raw terms of it, just to be able to keep my body and soul together, pay my tuition fee for the MBA that I was doing, and also survive for those 5 years that I was in the north.
Wow, such an inspiring story. It's inspiring especially for generation that are here today. If there's somebody who is out there and you're saying, well, my parents cannot sponsor me to school, I don't have an uncle, I don't have a brother. Here, Mr. Dele Adeyinka has taught us by his story that by finding something good that your hands can do, what is legal, ethically, and morally right, God will bless your hustle, as they say, and from there you can sponsor yourself to school, and God's grace and God's blessings will be upon you. Wow, that's fantastic. I want to pick up on what you said. You said you had an encounter with Christ at a very young age, and that story, I don't want to miss that part of the story, because you find generations saying, look, let me live my life, when I'm at the age of 50, 60, 70, I will go and see God. By that time, I'm ready to go and see him on departure or whatever. But you met him at such a young age. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that experience. And of course, the challenges of being a Christian as a young person.
26 September 1996 was when I gave my life to Christ right on campus. Loyola College at that time. Wow. Sorry, by the way, 1986, not 96, 86. Wow. Was when I gave my life to Christ, right at the fellowship in Loyola College, wow. Ibadan. Then I remember my friend who invited me, Olumide, and I hope at some point maybe you'll be able to listen to or watch this. He invited me to the school, to the campus fellowship, wow. And that was it. I had that encounter. By the way, Olumide was from, and I think he is still member of the Deeper Life Christian Fellowship. So I had no other choice but to join him to his fellowship, and that was it. So while on campus, while in school at the secondary school, we were going to school fellowship, but at home on weekends, Sundays and weekends, we were also going to Deeper Life Bible Church in Bashamu, Ashi in Ibadan then. And that was the big turning point for my life spiritually. And I will say it's been God all the way sustaining and guiding me all through. So that experience in itself kept me all through university days. Remember University of Ibadan, going through the 4 years on campus. It was fellowship all through, away from all the distractions that and the vices that the campus community in itself was obtaining at that time. So I was a church boy all throughout my campus days. Yeah.
Wow. I want to pick up on what you've also said, which is your encounter with Christ and how that guided you throughout your university. Mm-hmm. But I want you to speak on two levels. The role of the values that your parents gave to you. How did that guide you in school, whether from primary, secondary, university? And then also the values that you got from being a believer. How did that guide you as well? So that again, we're speaking to a generation and a society where those values, people have symposiums and they talk about values being eroded. Look around today. What we used to believe is not what a lot of whether the X, Z, Z, whatever generation we call them, many of them, they don't even believe in these values. But I want you to speak on how the values and what those values were that your parents imbibed in you, how that guided you in university, secondary school, and then of course when you got born again, how did that also help you in your education?
Thank you very much. For the values, top on the list would be discipline. My father, just like I said, an educationist, and that comes with being a disciplinarian. He had the cane and he did not spare any one of us from the rod, especially when we had at that time. So the practice at home is in the evenings, there's a center table and just right in the middle of the living room. Wow. Where it disciplines us. So it's either a 3, a 6, or a 12 stroke of the cane based on the level of clarity.
Did anybody get it 12?
So, of course, you remember the way those screens were, the door screens were, they were glass doors. So I remember a particular scenario where one of my siblings were all playing around with the husk of the maze, and they threw it and they broke the glass, only for my father to get in. As he was getting in, remove the curtain, and they found out that the glass was already shattered. So it was now who was going to confess, who did it, who didn't do it, and in the evening we all knew exactly what was going to happen. So it was a disciplinarian, transferred that to us, the discipline of ensuring we do our assignments as and when we needed to. In fact, he would sit down with us and ensure that he vets, in fact, if there's any skill he has passed across, thoroughness in checking what we were doing in school, following up and ensuring we were up to date with our assignments, and we delivered as and when required to our teacher. So he was a disciplinarian. And then he also taught us the value of working so hard. My father worked so hard and he transferred that to us. So we were never overwhelmed with work, whether they are home chores, whether they are school chores, there was school homework that we needed to do. he also transferred and he also passed those values. So those values really helped. So while I was on campus and I had that encounter with God, the discipline, the hard work that I've had at home, combined with all the spiritualities and all the lessons and the values that God in Himself was going to also pass across to us and to me, really kept me afloat in school. And by God's grace, I wasn't able to get into that circle of friends who will either derail or take me away from what God had as a plan or what my parents also impacted into me.
Wow. Then, from when you finished university, you said by the time you were going into NYSC, you decided to go and do your master's.
Okay.
Now, you don't have any funds. By God's grace, you were able to fund that master's program. What gave you that? What was that desire? What was that thing on the inside of you that felt, look, I needed to have a master's. I needed to go further. I don't want to stop here.
So, I don't know whether to say the pressure, but there's an inner drive that I have to say, first degree was not just going to be it. I was leading a family, quote unquote, being the firstborn in the family, and I knew that I needed to do a lot on one hand for my parents, on the other hand for my siblings. So I knew I was on the battlefield and I needed to fight. And listening to, and maybe sharing experiences, and I remember a very good mentor at the fellowship, and mentor outside of the fellowship. He's a doctor now, Dr. Demola Braimo. Was my mentor while I was in school. Deeper Life Campus Fellowship, and he really stood up for me. He coincidentally also was working in Kaduna, ATP in Kaduna. So I would go to his office, I would sit down at the reception and I would be watching him. So he was one of the people, in fact, that was the first time he supported me putting my resume together after my NYSC, and then when I was getting ready for my master. So he really challenged and encouraged me to say, go for your master. Since Kaduna was close to Zaria was close to Kaduna, I was always going every weekend and all of that. So a little bit of self-motivation for myself, but more importantly, having been under the mentorship of those who have gone ahead of me, a senior and a mentor at that time, both in church and in my career life. And that was how I made up my mind I was going to do my master's, even before getting into the secular arena of looking for a job in any way.
Fantastic. I just want to touch upon that issue of the role of having a mentor. You just expressed it, that person was there to encourage you to say, look, you can go further. And again, we are in a generation of those who feel they know it all, they don't need advice, they don't need counsel, they've got it all figured out. But you can see the advantage of having a mentor in your life. And I just want you to talk about individuals and persons and how they've been strategic in your path and in your growth. Having those mentors, whether they were spiritual mentors, educational, career mentor, how significant they are to your own life, so that somebody else would realize that, look, this life is not an individual journey. There are individuals that God has placed along your path who are supposed to be part of your journey. Just help me expatiate on that, sir.
Thank you very much. Right from primary school, my parents, once both of them checked through our results and they found out you're weak in some area, the next immediate recommendation is you need a teacher in this area. Whether it's math, whether it's physics, whether it's chemistry. At secondary school, my father was still insisting, before you get into YA, no, you need a teacher in this. The teacher, I remember my teacher had to insist to say no. Leave Delhi alone. Too many cooks spoil the brood. You want this teacher to help, you want this one to support and all of that.
Wow.
So he sowed that idea into us, like we need to lean on those who are ahead of us. So teachers in primary school, teachers in secondary school, and then when I got into university, I was always looking up to some who was going to guide, who was going to help in any way.
Wow.
And that spirit to look up to mentors was just naturally transferred into me. And I still do that up to today. From Dr. Demola Braimo, who I mentioned, who supported me in my service here, and several others who are also there for me. They did. And then when I got into my career line, I was always looking up to someone to run to for guidance, for counsel, for help. Demola Adebishe, I also met him in my career line. It was also there, and it's still there up to today, guiding and supporting. There is no strategic decision. Anytime I need to take any strategy, I must bounce it off 2, 3 of them. By the way, today I think I have about 7 major mentors
Wow.
who guide me, and without them, every year I'm always so grateful for having them in my life. So Ademola Adebise was there for me. Shegun Oloketui was there for me in my career also. He was always there, and he's still there till today. Of course, in the part of my journey in life, I also met with Pastor Bakari. Pastor Bakari, my big spiritual mentor, my father in the Lord, is there. And if there is anyone who is my friend today, the next person they're going to ask is Pastor B, because they know that my life and his is just intertwined. So shout out to Pastor B, who is also there, and of course the authentic Mrs. B by extension. They are also very, very there for us. Sir Aladekomo, Demola Aladekomo. By the way, I think I have something with the Demolas. I've counted about 3 or 4 Demolas.
Yes.
Demola Aladekomo is also there. Kola Yeye is also there. These are people who have surrounded myself with their pillars for every decision I need to take, for every major milestone that I need to take. They are always there, and I also always bounce things off them.
Wow. So what you have shown to us says it is important to have mentors around you. They could be spiritual mentors, they could be career mentors, they could be family mentors, but definitely God does not expect you to walk this journey alone. And now, you mentioned these wonderful people, which is going to now take us into the point of your career path. From Kaduna, you had your master's, then from your master's, you decided, how did you decide, I want to go into banking? How did you get into banking? And I know you have many years in the career of banking. Who said go into banking? And of course now I also want you to delve into why this digital part of banking. How did you evolve to that?
Thank you very much. My journey into the digital part, I would say it's been ordained by God. It wasn't a choice I deliberately made myself. Towards the end of my master's in Kaduna, I had the opportunity of doing a PhD in computer science.
Wow.
And that I actually registered for and I started. But 5 years as soon as I was done, because the reason why I was registered for the PhD at that time was because we were having breaks. Abacha break, ASU break, and all of that. So, and with my nature, I never wanted, I'm a little bit restless when it has to do with self-development. There's never a vacuum. If you check through my resume, there's never a vacuum. Any year, I will not do something to improve on myself. So, those 6 months, 3 months of break was getting worrisome. Why will I be idle? So I registered for this, and then I caught interest in computer science, and I said, "Oh, really? This thing is so exciting!"
Wow!
So when I got into Lagos, after all of the full master's program, I decided to now go into it deeply. Then master's was over, and then I now focused primarily on my computer skills, in improving myself and building myself in my computer skills. And that was what took me to writing all the relevant necessary exams in MCSC, Microsoft Certified System Engineer at that time. So I did that, and I got a job in a computer outfit, Tritech in Adeni Jones. That was actually my first job in Lagos at Tritech in Adeni Jones. So I was with Tritech for a while, but one of the clients that Tritech was serving were banks. So from working in Tritech, serving banks, I got into this bank at this particular time, and on this great day, I met someone who introduced himself to me as Bola Adeyinka. And I said, I'm Dele Adeyinka, I'm there with you.
Were you related?
We were not related, but I'm sure it was God. So that was the introduction. So he introduced himself to me as Bola Adeyinka, and I am Dele Adeyinka. He was the treasurer of the bank at that time, and I was just there as a worker from Tritech, serving them in their IT department. And then he came in to discuss, to say, oh, they were planning for a test the next weekend, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, really? Hi, Uncle Bola, I think I'm interested in this test you are planning to hold. And I said, oh, really? By all means, I can also put in my document. So that was how Uncle Bola Adeyinka took my
Your CV?
my resume exactly,
Wow.
and then submitted it. I got into writing the test, passed the test, and then a few months or weeks afterwards, I joined the bank, still to work in the IT department. So my IT competencies naturally just made me work in the IT department in a bank.
Which bank was that?
At that time, it was called Comet Merchant Bank, which now changed to First Atlantic Bank. So that was where I met the Femi Pedros of this world, Jide Sanwo-Olus of this world, Tokunbo Abirus. All of us were all there. Current Minister of Finance
Sorry,
Power.
are they all working in the bank?
Yeah, they were all in the bank.
Really?
Femi Pedro, Jide Sanwo-Olus, current Minister of Power, Aibaya Adelabu, Oladimeji, Isa. All of us were all in that bank, and I built a strong working relationship with them, which, by the way, paid off later in life, because as they were climbing, they were, it's just a function of daily, let's go, and we were all moving.
They took you up. They took you along.
Up the ladder.
Oh wow! So from that bank, where was the next place you went
From
to?
First Atlantic Bank to National Bank, where Demola Adebise invited me to join him. Kola Yeye was our MD at that time, and we were all working together. Demola left National Bank for Accenture, and then from Accenture joined Wema Bank. So it was the same Demola who brought me to National Bank that took me to Wema.
Wow.
And then at that time I met Oloketi, who we were already meeting in church, and I was a friend. So everything was just working together. So the emphasis about mentoring, as those mentors were climbing up,
They were taking you along the
they were taking
journey.
me along. It was just I've never applied. I can't remember applying on my own without the support of one or two of these mentors. They were all there. So as they were moving the ladder and they were climbing up, I ensured I stayed glued to them, always in touch with them, whether they are directly in my bank or outside of my bank. And once they see a window of opportunity that has to do in my area of competencies, of course, which I was doing well, the first option for them was also to invite me to join them. So credit to Demola Adebise, credit to Segun Oloketi, who gave me the opportunity and the privilege to join them at Wema Bank when they took over Wema Bank.
You know, I want to pause you there, and I just want to say this. You know, you've said something that's really struck me, and which is, number one, not just the importance of mentors, but people realizing that we all need what we call helpers of destiny.
Correct.
You know, God, we pray to God, and God answers our prayers. And one of the ways He answers our prayers is He puts people along the way. Those are the answers to those prayers. And individually, I want people to see themselves as somebody's helper of destiny. You know, you are helping somebody to fulfill their own destiny. And there's something also that you said that really struck me. You said, as your mentors were climbing up, they were also bringing you up. And that for me is just fantastic. It's a value that we should all have, that we're really here to bring people up. We're really here to pull somebody along the journey. Stop all these pulling somebody down. You know, that's not how life is. The beauty about life is not only are you climbing, but you're also bringing people along that same mountain. They're also climbing with you. Wow, this is just awesome.
I need to quickly also underscore Senator Tokunbo Abiru, current serving senator today. He gave me the opportunity to join Polaris Bank.
Wow.
Yeah, so one of those my mentors, who we also worked together at First Atlantic Bank at that time. So when he had the opportunity of working at Polaris Bank, we met in one industry meeting, and he gave me his card and he said he wanted us to work together. So it was an exclusive invite to join him at Polaris Bank. So that was my journey into Polaris Bank.
Fantastic. As we're talking about your career, we cannot talk about your career without mentioning Wema Bank and Alert. That phase of your life, I mean, that for me is how I got to see this other side of Mr. Dele Adeyinka. I'd seen you as, he's a member of the church, but Alert was like, wow, we have a genius in our midst. We have a shining star in our midst. I mean, the Alert app, when it came up, and to think that it was put together, of course, with a team of people, and of course with the encouragement of, I think Mr. Oloketi was then the MD of Wema Bank. How was that experience for you? The not just the opportunity, but the pioneering spirit that came along with that particular assignment.
Thank you. You were right to say it's a major turning point in my career, and it's still a very big reference point in my career today. It brought me into limelight, and I will always give that credit to the likes of Shegun Lekitu, who was leading the team at that time, the board that were there for us at that time, Demola Adebise, Moruf Hosseini, all of those are the EDs and the MDs who I worked with at that time. When I was given the opportunity to lead the team, by the way, we were 12 of us that were selected, and I had the privilege of leading that team. From 12, we grew to about 200 of us.
How old were you
before? How old was I?
Age is important. I want people to know how young you were then.
40. This was like 2016, right? 2017 was when we launched. But that project initially on its own started 2016. Yeah, so I was in my early 40s, by the way, at that time. 40, 41 thereabouts at that time when I was given the privilege to lead the team. So 12 of us, and then we grew up to 200 before I finally left the bank. It was a very exciting journey, very challenging. We were isolated, given a completely different building of our own, and we worked around the clock. They challenged us, they brought out the best in us. It's something that we never copied because there was no other bank in the industry. So Alat was the first fully digital bank in Nigeria as at that time, and it turned the fortune of the bank around, and as well as a good number of us that were on that team turned our career around for good.
There's a word you used there. You used the word pressure. You know, a lot of people, when they're put under pressure, they buckle under pressure. But this is a new idea, a new concept, never done before. And like you said, they put you in a separate office. From 12, you grew to 200. I believe in that project, there were pressure moments. There were difficult moments. How did you overcome pressure? Because we want a generation, and not just to be spineless, because pressure will definitely come. Things will not go the way you plan it. As you're going along, it's like somebody is throwing spanners from different directions. But you didn't give up. You kept on going. So pressure, how did you cope with that pressure?
So there were pressures from all angles, because if you see the word digital transformation, the easier pressure would be working with the systems. It is garbage in, garbage out, said. So you program well, the system responds to you. But there's another type of pressure in the transformation in itself. And the transformation part of it had to do with people. You needed to find a way of managing stakeholders. Who are the control guys, who are the risk management guys, who are the audit guys, all of these stakeholders, even the technology guys, the chief information security office, all of those stakeholders needed to have a voice in and make their input into what we were doing. There were stakeholders in the bank, and Alat was not going to be built in isolation of all of these other stakeholders. So it takes a lot, or it took a lot for us to manage all of these stakeholders, ensure that they were able to see from our point of view, manage them in such a way that they had to sign off and put their stamp behind coming up with this novel idea and offering it to the world. Remember, banking is a very, I would say, conservative, sacred assignment where people's trust had to be won for them to be able to put in their funds. So if you wanted people to open accounts, you wanted people to put their deposit, you wanted people to do transactions on that platform, on that app, we just needed to be sure that we crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's before we push it to the consumers to start using. And gracefully, that was the part of the project that we just need to manage, and it was a successful experiment all through.
Wow, thank you so much. You know, one of my favorite meals in a Chinese restaurant is a dish called sweet and sour chicken. So I like that sweet and sour chicken because it has the sweet part and it's got some sour part. And I'm saying that to say this about Alat. You've talked about this sweet part. The first digital banking platform in Nigeria then, the awesome support that you had from all the names that you've mentioned. But then there's that sour part, and the sour part which I would want you to speak about, because again, it's going to tell us that in life sometimes there are those partners that come in and how you overcome those trying periods. Your exit from Wema Bank and from Alert, from what we know or from what I know, the little that I know, I was a bit shocked by it. I was shocked that by the time Mr. Lokiti left, it's like literally everybody from Alert sort of left, the pioneering team sort of left. And I know that for us outsiders, we can only guess. But I want you to share it, and the reason I'm asking you to share it is to say to everyone that times when things do not pan out the way you hope that it would, but that's not the end of life. There's always something better on the other side, and how do you continue? We walk up with your head up in spite of what you're going through. So I want you to please shed a bit of light on that.
All right, thank you. Well, Alert, just like we have all alluded to, was a major milestone, a major turning point in my career, and a big milestone for that matter, and I'll forever be grateful for all those who gave me the opportunity to participate in that project. So it became very successful, and with success comes its challenge. So there were a lot of envy, jealousy, everyone wanted to associate with it. By the way, Alert was standing alone from the bank, the traditional bank. So everyone was applying to say, this guy is, they don't have 3 heads, so let's also join them. So that pressure was there, and everybody wanted to be part of that team, and that came with its own negative impact also, because people were insinuating a whole lot of stuff. But just like my reference would be to that well that Jacob was digging, he would dig one, find water, and when it's almost getting to a position where strife, he will pour and then he will go to the next well and dig another one, find the water. And like that, until finally it got to real. But I'm sure at some point, by God's grace, I will get to my real. But then, when the issues were all coming up and it was becoming some concerns about strife and all of that, I knew it was time for me to move on. Yes, my main mentor at that time left, and maybe all the cover and the shield they was giving at those ESCO and board level were not there at that time. But as God will have it, another mentor beckoned, Senator Tokunbo beckoned and gave me an opportunity to say, what you've done in this other bank, will you come and do that? Exactly at the point at which some other guys internally were also worried that, why is this guy all shining too much? This bright light, we'll find a way around it and say, okay. And then I just said, okay, let's go give it another shot. And it was an exciting journey for me, having the privilege to also give birth to another full digital bank called Vault with Polaris Bank.
Fantastic. We are going to talk about Vault because that is where you're currently the Chief Digital Officer at Polaris. I was there at the launch of Vault. And I was so proud of you. I was proud to be associated with you on that day. And going into, I don't know what you met on ground when you entered into Polaris Bank, and then this new idea was going to come and you were going to lead the team. And were you afraid? Were you concerned whether it's, whether your team would be supporting, whether you would have the support of people? How did you go in to say, look, the same energy or greater energy you put into Polaris and they would have the same success as you did in Alert?
Yeah, thank you very much. Was I afraid? Maybe not. Inbuilt or God's grace, I would say, I'm so passionate about what I do. So given the opportunity to do it again, the same way of what happened at Alert, where I was one of the 12, when I got into Polaris, I was the only one that was employed.
Wow.
So I just had to start the whole team from the conceptual phase of doing all the documents to building a team and setting up and ultimately building Vault. So I was the first, and gracefully, ESCO also gave me another big support. Even though I've learned some lessons from my experiences at Alert, I insisted that I needed executive support for me to really, really succeed. And while going through the interview, I made that clear with them. So I have the support of ESCO, and they gave me all the required support of building a team, employing people from not just from Alat, but from the whole industry. I threw my nets open and I beckoned on a good number of colleagues to come in, join me in building Vault, and that we did. We had a slightly different payment structure, salary structure for this set of people. It was approved, so their remuneration was a little bit different from the regular traditional people. A lot of incentives were given to them just for us to build a very formidable team. And that we did. And by God's grace, with God's input, God's wisdom, God's guidance, we were able to come up with Vault, and Vault is also a very successful story today in the industry.